Welcome to our first ever Vets on Video chat that we're going to have, where we will discuss our true feelings and the true events that happened in Vietnam as we personally witnessed it. My name is Rick Amsterdam. I am one of the co-hosts along with Keri Giannotti, who will be overseeing these clips as we watch them and our reactions. I served in the Army from 1969 through 1972. I enlisted. I went to Vietnam the first week of April 1970, and I served there until the first week of April 1971. I was in the United States Army, Signal Corps. I was a radio man on top of a mountain called Nui Ba Den, the Black Virgin Mountain, where I served with 125 of the greatest guys that I ever knew from the 25th Infantry Division. Solid guys, great guys. And that is my story into the military. We will now introduce our panelists. First will be Chuck Dauchert. Chuck, will you please give your introduction?
Hi, my name is Chuck Dauchert. I enlisted in the Army in 1965 and got out in 1968. I arrived in Vietnam on November 1st, 1966, and left in October the 31st, 1967. I was in the Signal Corps. Fixed station radio man, basically stationed at a Tan Son Nhut, and I also put up radio towers in Vietnam.
Thank you. All right, we'll now go on to Michael Coale.
Hello, everybody. Obviously, my name is Michael Coale, as was announced. I was drafted into the Army in 1966. I was 23 years old at the time and still on my honeymoon. So I had a wife to leave behind when I went off to service. I didn't volunteer for anything. I just said, let me just ride out my 2 years and get my time in and get it done. The first year was spent in the United States. And of course, living in New Jersey, we have Fort Dix, which was a major training center for new recruits. However, there was a certain group of us felt we should go to Fort Carson, Colorado for our basic training. So instead of being a few miles from home, I was about 2,000 miles from home in the foothills of the beautiful Rocky Mountains, which I do love and I still love to this day. Anyway, we knew we were going to all go to Vietnam. We just wrote it out, and I ended up with the 25th Division in Cu Chi, which is about 25 miles northwest of Saigon along the Cambodian border. And it was actually at the terminus of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which came down through Laos and Cambodia and came across through they infiltrated through there. And we were there to try and stop them. I was in a recon platoon. I was an RTO. I carried the radio for the lieutenant. And we didn't do any recon. We were actually the palace guard. We provided security for the brains of the outfit, the lieutenant commander who commanded the battalion. And we would be in the center. A company would be on one side and B company. It's kind of hard to understand, but we didn't have it that difficult, in all honesty. But we still had to go out in the field. We flew on the helicopters. We did assaults. We did sweeps. We did all sorts of things like that. But we were special because we had a guard, the commander. So I did my 2 years, and I did actually 11 months and 23 days in Vietnam, and I came home, and I was discharged from the Army. And here I am, and I became my story.
Thank you, Mike. Pete?
Hi, my name is Peter Meloro. I went into the service in August of 1967. I wasn't drafted. I spent, after basic training in Fort Gordon, Georgia, and advanced training in South Carolina. I was in Germany for about 14 months before I received orders for Vietnam. My job function in the military was administrative. I was a company clerk in Germany. And when I arrived in Vietnam, I wound up with an infantry company, and I served as the company clerk for that infantry company. Probably the worst possible job I could have had with my job function, but wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, quite frankly. So I spent a year in a place called Camp Evans, northwest, of the city of Hue, up in the I Corps area near the demilitarized zone. I arrived in Vietnam July 10th of 1969 and left July 9th of 1970. And that's my story.
Thank you, Keri. Well, you just said it. So when was the first time you saw Platoon? And we want to talk about specific segments in the film, but to begin with, we'll say, when was the first time, if you ever saw the movie Platoon, and what was your initial reaction to the movie Platoon?
Okay. And feel free to say, like, you've never seen it again. Like, we want you to be as truthful as possible. So if it was way too much, if you walked out of the theater, whatever the situation was, tell the people what it was, because they need to know.
And I can start with that. So I saw it, I didn't see it until probably 2012, 2014 or something like that. I just couldn't bring myself to watch it. I would start to watch the beginning and I couldn't get past the opening scene. And I always shut it down. But eventually I did watch it. A lot of emotions when you see that movie. A lot of it's realistic. A lot of it just, even if it's not, it brings back the realism to events that we kind of relate to. And then I don't watch it again. And then when we came up with this project, I know it was a must do. So I did watch it again about a week ago, and those emotions, those same emotions that told me not to watch it, came back. And I did, and it was very difficult to watch. But, actually watching it about a week ago, I understand it better because time has passed and we're all a little bit older. So I do understand it more, and I understand the meaning of it, and I'm able to relate with not as much emotion, if you will. But it is very difficult. And I've only seen it once a long time ago and once last week. Chuck?
Mine is a little bit unusual story with Platoon. I told Keri I really don't watch war movies at all.
Right.
And it was in 1988 when I was the scoutmaster up on top of Squeeze Mountain, and we got a new guy come in, very quiet, wore a boonie hat, limped a little bit, had his arm dragged a little bit, and we got along very well. And then I found out that he was a Vietnam veteran. He had been severely wounded. He was in, Mike may know this, he always sends me his hat. He was in Bravo Company, 3rd of the 22nd Infantry.
That's yep.
These not words.
Mhm.
And he never really opened up. And one night when we were in a tent in, I forget, we were camping with the scouts, he related he had gotten shot. He was wounded on April the 10th of 1968. Horrible wound, a sucking chest wound. He was the only guy that I know that actually survived. And he wanted to go see Platoon, but he did not want to go by himself. He wanted to go with somebody. And naturally, I was not in the infantry. I was exposed to some things during my time in Vietnam. Definitely not what an infantryman would be exposed to. So we went together, and he was behind there, and he taps us on the shoulder in the middle of the thing, and he says, "I can't believe that you guys, not necessarily me, but definitely him, went through this absolute hell." And the other thing would be when they were stirring the pot of shit, and the lady next to us knocked her husband and says, "What are they making, biscuits?" So anyway, think about that. so anyway, it was for me. It was it was quite a difficult movie to get through. I did get through it, and at the end, he was in tears.
Yeah.
So that's the way I get a little bit nervous. And I called him yesterday. I called him the other day. He's 82. He was in Xenia, Ohio. We've been friends since then, calling each other. And I asked him, I said, "Let me ask you some pointed questions." Later, I was the only one that he told that he got shot. He didn't even tell. His wife knew, but no one else knew.
Wow.
Absolutely nobody knew that he was, and he had told me the story. And I said, "Let me ask you, you were out there, you were with the guys." He was a lieutenant, and I said to him, "What about the pot?" And he just said, like, when he went out, he never saw issues with drugs. And don't forget, this was right after Tet. This was 68, and the 25th was, Mike may know more than I do, heavily involved. And I have some other things I'll mention about the 25th, but the movie was it was a little bit difficult.
All right. Thank you, Chuck. Pete, you want to go?
Yes.
Sure. The first time I saw it probably was about a year after it came out in 1986. And I came very close to walking out of the theater, but I actually got up out of my seat and started to walk out. But then I returned and I did watch it all. And I was upset for a number of reasons. I mean, a lot. I felt the movie was realistic and unrealistic, if that makes any sense.
Correct.
The fear on being on a night defensive position. And again, I wasn't in the infantry per se, but I dealt on a daily basis with the guys who were out there. And I know what they went through from their perspective. But what I was upset about that film, beyond the visual, that the body bags and things like that, was the emphasis on drugs.
Yeah.
And essentially the attack on civilians and rape and things like that, you know, and war is hell, obviously, and these things happen. And I suspect it happened in Vietnam. But I have to tell you, I didn't see any of that in my infantry company. Infantry soldiers would not tolerate someone being out there and smoking marijuana in a night defensive position and other areas where the enemy was undoubtedly going to attack. So I felt that there was a level of unrealistic facts, or not facts, but unrealistic scenes. I in fact called a couple of guys that were infantry soldiers that were in my company yesterday and today, and asked them exactly that. I said, "Did you have any guys smoking dope out there while you were in the bush?" They said, "Absolutely not." They said sometimes the guys on a fire base would, but not if there was enemy activity around. None of that was going on. Base camps, you probably saw a little more of it. But one interesting fact, having little to do with the movie, and I said, if you had anybody who was smoking a lot, what would happen? He said, send their butts to the rear. He said that didn't happen, but we did send one guy to the rear. And I said, why was that? He said excessive snoring, which I found funny, but I understood. I mean, if you're an infantry soldier in a night defensive position, you don't want someone who is uncontrolled snoring out there. And they actually had to send the guy back to the rear, and I guess have some other job. But again, realistic and unrealistic, and a little pissed about how it portrayed us. Baby killers, drug addicts. We all were hit with that for a period of years. And to some extent, I think this movie reinforced it.
Yeah, that's a really good observation, Pete.
All right, Mr. Coale, you're up.
All right, it was my division, and we knew the story, the whole bit. It's number one, it's Hollywood. Don't ever forget, it's Hollywood. They're there to make money. They grandize everything. Yes, there was drugs, but not in the field. In the base camp, yes. We drank beer, we drank whiskey, we got frogs drunk, and we got drunk. But the movie was very realistic in parts, and other parts were a little far-fetched, like the drugs and the voodoo stuff in the dark with the candles and all. You didn't do that crap. You were scared out of your wits. You had to keep your wits about you. So it was, I mean, like the tracers in the firefights, green tracers, that was the enemy. They had green tracers, we had red tracers. And boy, oh boy, when they in the movie, I jumped when I saw that. It's holy cow, very realistic. But yes, it's Hollywood, and it was there to make money. And it was about the 3rd of the 22nd Regiment up in Dauchert. And I believe it was portrayed about a base, LZ Gold, they called it. Yeah. And a lot of the guys talked about it. They almost got overrun and everything. But yeah, it was a little far-fetched at times, but it's very realistic out of all the movies. And the music was fantastic. Adagio for strings, very heart-wrenching. So, but it was, it was a movie again. There you go.
All right. So me as the non-Vietnam veteran, and I think for a lot of people of my generation, and I spoke to, like you guys spoke to a lot of your friends, I spoke to a lot of my friends. It was the first movie we saw about Vietnam. And, we're that echo generation. My dad was too young to serve, so he didn't. But I think a lot of people of my generation saw it and was like, oh, that's what happened to Dad. and kind of it opened the floodgates of Michael Coale is laughing like there's a story there. But like, you know, as someone who's worked with you all for these years, I know, you know, your kids don't get to hear these stories the way I do as someone who's worked with you. But I was probably a little younger than I should have been. It comes out in 1986, so I'm 6. I don't think I saw it at 6. I can't remember if I saw it on HBO or if I saw like the Channel 11 version. And that should probably be explained for the younger fans. The Channel 11 version was like a little watered down, tamer with commercials. But I remember watching it and just thinking like, what is going on here? And I need to know more. And it's kind of, for me, the reason I got interested in the Vietnam era. And it's kind of been a lifelong career for me here, working with you guys and telling the stories of the Vietnam veterans. I will say my favorite scene, and for a long time it was my favorite song of the Vietnam era, was Tears of a Clown. It got replaced by the band's I Shall Be Released, but as Michael Coale said, the soundtrack is amazing. I think having watched it so young, I don't remember the super violent parts. I remember the Zippo lighter and the village being burnt down, but I don't remember that explicit scene after that. But again, it was, for me, it was like, what is going on here? And kind of opened the door for this being my small passion project.
Mhm.
And I too, I watched it over a month because it's hard, and I can understand why you guys, it's a see it once and done kind of film. All right. Now feel free to hop in at any time and make a comment and speak over the film. For me, is that real? Did that gate really come down and you guys exit that way?
No,
Yes.
well, it depended on the year that you went to Vietnam. Probably for Pete and I, we went commercial.
Yes.
So we stepped off a commercial jet. I know, Mike, did you step off a C-130 like that?
No, but you took those in country from your
Yes.
first
Yeah, that we did, right.
in country, and they're so, you know, you can really, either way, they were there. We did use them, and the gate does go down, Kerry, just like
Absolutely,
that.
just like that.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. That was a bigger one. The C-130, was it? I don't know what that was.
Yeah,
Terrible.
it looked like a C-130.
Doesn't matter. Carry on.
All right.
Yeah.
I remember as the plane landed, wondering, did I have to run somewhere? Was there going to be some incoming? I had no clue as to what my expectation was. And when we exited the plane, I had 2 immediate senses. One was the extreme. Again, I got there in July.
Right.
And it was in Cameron Bay, which is in further south than many areas. The extreme heat, it hit you like I just slammed you. And then the smell. What am I smelling?
Right.
There's an odor here that I've never experienced before. And what it was the stirring of the biscuits, as we've said previously, the stirring of the waste, which I learned was what the smell was. But I just remember not knowing what to expect, and then those 2 senses just hit you. You know, your sense of smell and the heat. It was just almost unbearable.
You know, it was weird too. So that flight, that 24-hour flight, I took my boots off probably after about 12 hours. And most of us took our boots off. And when we landed, my feet were so swollen, I had a hard time putting my boots back on because you had your boots off all that time. It was weird, but then exactly what you said, Pete, the smell and the heat, just incredible.
We flew with a Mac flight. It was a TWA, and we had engine trouble in Hawaii, and the flight was delayed, and we were supposed to land at Benoit. And he got on, the captain got on and said, because of a situation at Benoit, we're going to be diverted to Tan Son Nhut. So we landed very early in the morning. Sun was just coming up. The vapors were coming off the runway and everything like that. And a little Oriental guy, I could use an inappropriate name there, went out, squatted down, defecated right on the runway, took his finger, wiped his rear end and put it in a puddle of water. And exactly when he did that, the captain went on and said, welcome to the Republic of South Vietnam. And the whole place went, holy shit. And then we went out when the door opened, just like everyone, with the heat and what Pete said, the absolute fear. You didn't know, especially when we got diverted, we didn't know whether, something was going to come in on top of it. And everybody was screaming at us, go, run. So anyway, I will always remember that.
I think we landed on the right screenshot here with Charlie Sheen. It looks like he's got a nasty smell in his nose. So.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very fortuitous here. All right.
I'm crying.
I was so stupid and naive, I didn't even know what that was.
Wow.
Really?
I mean, that's a hammer right there. If that doesn't catch you in the head, this is what war is. The only thing missing is the smells. And too bad Hollywood hasn't come up with a way to recreate the smells.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't hit you in the head. Boy, oh boy.
Yeah. And if you didn't see that as you landed, you certainly saw it at various times throughout your tour.
Correct.
Yeah. Go a little further, Keri, with this.
Well, I think that there was a documentary I once saw where it said, like, you would get off the plane and somebody else would get on, and the seat would still be warm.
Right.
And you knew, like, somebody just started and entered. All right, I'm going to advance a smidge.
Dipped in shit. You me.
You dudes gonna love
We're way on it.
for fucking ever. 65 and a wake up. Oh, Lord.
Did you hear what he just said?
365 and a wake
up. Yeah.
Well, I think this is a very poignant scene to stop on with this. There's a famous term for this you guys might want to tell us about.
The 1,000-yard stare. Yep.
Yeah. And it's indicative, interestingly enough, and they talk about it in the film, I believe, a little bit. The new guys were not befriended, and maybe befriended is not the right term, but you didn't get too close to them because they had no experience, and the likelihood that they were going to screw up was much higher than anyone who had been in the bush or been in Nam of 6-7 months. So the new guys, they weren't sent out to slaughter necessarily, but they weren't taken under the wing as fast as they might have in many cases. And interestingly enough, if you watch Band of Brothers during the World War II show, they talk about just that thing as well. That the new fellows coming in, you didn't go out of your way to get to know them too much.
All right. I think as we segue into this scene, we hear a famous sound that you guys are well aware of.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us about those Hueys.
They were everything. They were your mail, your food, your taxi, and your going home ticket. Yeah. So we relied so much on them, and the pilots were great. They were your best friends, along with the medics. So, yep, the Huey, that noise you'll never forget.
Yeah. Infantry soldiers loved them and hated them. They loved them because they brought them food and ammunition and fresh clothes, took them out when they needed to get out, but it also identified where they were. If the enemy was in the vicinity, the Hueys were the way they would recognize exactly what our location was if they didn't already know.
When we were putting up the radio towers at Tan Son Nhut, the First Aviation was right up the road from us. And when those guys come in, we used to always, stop what we were doing and wave. And some of those helicopter pilots were a little nuts. They would drive around the tower, especially if it was their last ride. But out of respect, we would see, a lot of people don't know, even though it was an Air Force base, if an Army helicopter came into Tan Son Nhut, they had to be transported by ambulance outside of the base to be at a medevac place. So when we saw originally, now this is 1966, a medevac chopper coming in with the crosses on it, we would stop our work and salute. We would just salute because we knew we would see the ambulances, and then unfortunately you would see the body bags come out of the chopper. So we knew. So we totally respected the helicopter. I was in a helicopter very few times, but we totally respected what they accomplished and did.
See, and I was there a little bit later than you guys because I didn't get there until April of 70, so it was probably a little bit different beginning for me. When I stepped off that plane, the heat, the smells, just like all of us, and they did, take us by bus with barbed wire windows, which all of us did. And what the hell is this all about? And when we got to, I don't remember if it was 90th or 92nd replacement in London. 90th. When we got there, they put us, the plane load, they put us into a formation, and they had kind of like a grandstand there where some sergeant got up and he starts telling us, "Welcome to Vietnam," and he's telling us things to do as someone else was passing us out. They were passing out toothbrushes. They gave us dental floss, and the most important, and they gave us actually writing paper, some writing paper to write home. And he started talking about Vietnam, and he started saying what to expect. And he told us about, what was it, maybe a mile away was LBJ, Long Binh Jail, from where we were. And he said, he started talking about Long Binh Jail. And he said, listen, he said, when you're here, you're going to be tempted. He said, you're going to be tempted to do drugs, and you're going to be tempted to do a lot of things. He said, I'm going to tell you all right now, if you're caught doing drugs, he said, you're going to go to Long Binh Jail for 6 years. That's the penalty. He said, now, if you shoot a civilian in Vietnam, you'll get 6 months. He said, if any of you got any kind of stressed out feelings that you got to get rid of, he said, do yourself a favor, shoot a civilian, because you'll only get 6 months. But if you get caught with drugs, you're going to get 6 years. Are you kidding me? This is the first day in Vietnam, and he's telling us, if you got to do anything, just shoot a civilian, and it's not so bad. That's the initial reaction. Welcome to Vietnam. Yeah. First day, very first day. Yep.
Move on right before the first ambush scene. We're going to look at, I believe it's Sergeant O'Neill, and he's one of the sergeants in the film. And they're getting the directions for who's going out on the first ambush, and he uses a very familiar term among Vietnam veterans. Right. So for the sake of the intro here, I'll just say what I said again. So we're going to move on right before the first ambush scene. We're going to look at, I believe it's Sergeant O'Neill, and he's one of the sergeants in the film. And they're getting the directions for who's going out on the first ambush, and he uses a very familiar term among veterans. Let me get you guys the video. I just got the word.
Sergeant Barnes. Ambush. What?
All right, this is the scene. I'm going to let it play. You guys jump in at any moment. I'll hit pause.
You take your squad out. Warren, you stay in, but I need Texan Jr. from your squad.
Roger that.
Okay, move out in 2-0 mics.
I thought it was O'Neill's turn tonight.
No. Tubbs and Morehouse are short. Pew Shang's going on an R&R tomorrow, and you want to send them out on an ambush? You got the fresh meat, buddy.
All right, a lot to talk about in that one. We got short timers and we got R&R.
And fresh meat.
And fresh
And
meat.
fresh meat. Yes.
Which, so you know, is a nice term. There's an acronym, FNG.
If at all possible, they would try to keep you back so you wouldn't have to go out. If everybody knew when they were going on R&R, everybody tried their best to keep you safe and sound. And like maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks before you went home, they would keep you in also. So what it was, I mean, that was kind of silly, that scene there, you know, a guy laughing like that. But we did our best to, you know, make sure everybody got to their R&R. So nobody wanted to go on night ambush, that's for sure.
You know what I think he was doing, Mike? I think he was trying to worm his way out.
Probably was. I don't remember the whole, but yeah, night ambush was horrible. That was your worst nightmare. It was like 2 or 3 or 4, maybe a squad. That was it. And you try how to stay awake all night. You see it in the movie. It was, oh my Lord, scary. Oh, I got stories, but I'm not telling them. So anyway.
Mike is right. As a company clerk, I would be the one who would be calling guys in from the field prior to their R&R and prior to their leaving, because I'd be cutting the orders for them.
Yep.
And we did make an effort. Unfortunately, by the time many guys were going, we were very, very understaffed. You know, we were never at full company strength. I mean, I'd say 60% at most. So every guy coming out of the field was a major issue, but we tried to bring them in so that they're not waiting to get on a chopper and leave the next day. We really made every effort to do that.
You want to go get new toothpaste maybe at the PX or something. You know, you wanted to be your best when you left.
Yes.
So you're right. That's right, Peter. Yep. The Clarks did a good job. They really did. And they became your best friends too, didn't they?
I've been told.
Yeah, we didn't. Our R&R, we didn't have quotas. Like I guess early on, I mean later on, the guy said they had a lot of quotas. We didn't have quotas, and we always saved the married guys. Always we saved that for Hawaii.
Yes.
And then myself, because I was in Australia now for a short period of time. Australia was not opened because of the black GI early on. The only black people they had pretty much in Australia was Aborigines. So when we were with the Australian guy, they were always saying, oh, you can go to Victoriaville or whatever they were from. My sister, they always wanted to meet an American. So my buddy and I, who I still keep in contact, we waited. And I had 45 days in country. Finally, my CO, Captain Rossi, come and said, I don't give a you-know-what. You two are getting on a plane. So we went to Japan. And as far as the last assignment, what everyone said, I got the last. They always kept the guys with the short timers thing. My last thing was 6 days before I left. I made the beer run into Newport Docks in Saigon to pick up the beer, and we almost lost a guy because we went in 3 guys in a deuce and a half, and one guy, you had to wait. I don't know if you're familiar with that. You had to wait in line to get supplies like you wouldn't believe. There was lines and lines. And we're waiting in line. We had no radio. We had only one rifle for the 3 of us. And all of a sudden, this guy from Detroit, I don't want to mention names here, but he was missing. He's missing. Where the heck is he? I got no radio. Where the heck he is? So finally, this Navy guy comes out and he says, you got to get the blank out of here. You get your truck out of line, get out of here. So I'm driving back with 6 days left, minus, and I was a sergeant, minus one guy. And we're looking in the deuce and a half, the long mirrors. I'm looking in the mirror, and all of a sudden I see feet on the, I hit the brake of the truck and everything. I get out. He was sound asleep in the bowls of the deuce and a half on top. So I didn't lose a guy, and that's my story.
But you're right about R&R. But when I was there later on, probably when Pete was there too, it went by seniority. So like if you wanted to go to Taipei, Japan, that was pretty easy. You could go at any time. But if you wanted to go to Australia, because I did go to Australia, Chuck, you had to be in country a long time because it was one of the most desired places to go. Because simply put, that's where the round-eyed girls were. So you wanted to go to Australia. I was in country 9 months before I was able to get to Australia, and I went for Christmas 1970, and which was amazing, but it was depressing at the same time because you can't. Instead of like you're looking forward to each day, as soon as you landed, the clock started in reverse.
Yeah.
7 days left, 6 days left, 5 days left. And I came back on New Year's Day. On New Year's Day, I came back, and that was just the thought of coming back into the war after R&R was horrible. And I knew I was going right back up to the mountain, which was even worse, and going on R&R. I don't know what it was like for you guys. When I went back to I think it was either Tonsanut or Longben, I think probably Tonsanut to fly out to go to Australia. I was the only guy there with weapons. It was later in the war. He's still 1970, but I was there, and everybody's looking at me like, who the hell is this guy? Because I'm armed to the teeth. And they say, oh, you got to remember, you have to put your weapons or whatever you have with you in a locker, with no lock. And I went up to the CO and I said, I'm not leaving my weapons here. Just, and he said, I said, I at least need a lock and a key. And he said, no one's going to touch it. And he was right. No one touched my stuff. No one touched it. But it was very uncomfortable. The whole situation is just so weird. You're walking in and you're about to go somewhere, leave the country, knowing you got to come back to the country. And you leave your weapons in a locker that's unsecure. You fly there, you go to R&R, you do the best you can, have a good time. But that clock is ticking. Yeah. You're going back, and that's a horrible feeling. It's worse, I think, than the initial trip to Vietnam, because you already know what you're in for. Yeah. And now you're coming back from R&R, and you're like, that's why a lot of guys didn't come back from R&R. They just like, I'm not going back to that, and they left, so they wouldn't come back. Yeah. That R&R was super interesting, but a lot of my friends went. They went to Taipei, or Taiwan, different areas, which was different. We always left the Hawaii, like Chuck said, to the married guys, because this way they can meet their wife or their fiance. And that was the right thing to do. It was like an unwritten rule.
That was an unwritten rule. Mike, did you go on R&R? Did you go to Hawaii?
I did. My wife flew to Hawaii.
Right.
That was probably one of the most difficult days saying goodbye.
Yeah.
All the wives are on. If you've been to old Honolulu, the airport used to be, you could stand on top and watch the planes come and go. And all the wives are up on top, and we're walking out to our plane. And nobody wanted to look back. It was horrible. Yeah. It was, oh my gosh. But we all got through it somehow. So here we are.
Like Rick said, I went to Sydney, Australia as well. I had been in country about 7 months before I got there. I will confess that I had an easier time getting to Sydney, since I was the one who assigned where people would go.
You were doing the typing.
So, there are some bennies to being a company clerk.
Yes, there were.
But I do talk to some people on occasion, and I say, what do you think the first thing I did when I got into the hotel in Sydney? And they'll come up with you, and you checked in, you went to a bar, you did this, you did that. I says, no. I walked into the bathroom,
Yep.
I got on my knees. I looked at the toilet and I flushed it. And I just literally watched the water go down. And they say, "Why'd you do that?" And I said, "Well, you live without plumbing for 7 months and you'll know damn well why you did it." And that's exactly the first thing I did. But an even funnier story is when I'm checking into the hotel, the guy who's checking me in, he gives me, if you giving you the run of the hotel, what's going on. Then he asked me, "Are you going to bring any birds into the room?" And I looked at him like he was crazy. And I said, "I don't think so." And then he meant, "Are you going to bring any birds in the room?" I said, "Listen, I've been at the foot of the Oshawa Valley for 7 months. I'm not going to bring any goddamn birds, monkeys, or anything else into the room."
No.
He's laughing his butt off because birds in Australia are female.
Yep.
Females.
Yeah.
So I then said to him, "Well, now that I know what birds are, I'm looking for a flock."
We went to Japan, and I still keep in touch with my buddy. He was in Chaffee, Missouri. Big heavyset guy, should have never been in the military, dislocated his shoulder. Big long story. But anyway, so they gave us you can go, I'll never forget the place called Hotel Dai, and they gave you free, like you had to get a suit or you could get, so we decided, well, we're in Japan, we're gonna have sake. Now from Brooklyn, I never had sake in my life. So anyway, so we're sitting on the bar, him and he never had sake, from Missouri, right? So we're sitting, and the little zip comes up. He gives us that. We each got a bottle, and I don't know if you ever had that. When you taste it, it tastes disgusting.
It's like moonshine.
Oh my God! And we're drinking it. Now the second one tastes a little bit better, and the third one tastes a little bit better, and the fourth one, and we're drinking and having a good time. Well, I think I weighed like 140. He was about 240. He got up off the high chair of the thing and went right down. Bang! So that was the first day in R&R, dragging him and trying to get the bar guy, who's a little Oriental guy, as small and me, trying to drag him up to the room.
You know what was weird too, Pete? Did this happen to you? So when I landed in Australia, it was mandatory that you had clothing in the airport. So when you land, because you only had the clothes on your back, and they wouldn't let you walk around Australia like that.
Yeah,
so there was a clothing rental place right there, and they wouldn't let you go past it. They said, "Go find your size, and whatever." I forgot how much it was for the week. Get enough clothes for the week. You had to rent clothing for the week.
That was the same in Japan too. Same thing.
Yeah, I actually had some clothes sent to me. I actually had some clothes sent to me, so I had clothes to change into. I sent a letter to Mom and said, "Okay," I wasn't married, obviously. "Okay, and then you just send A, B, C, and D to me as soon as you can." And it took some time to get there, but it got there.
Right.
It's funny. Some people ended up with 2 R&Rs, which I don't know how they finagled that. I'm sure the company clerk had something to do with it, but some people, they did have 2 R&Rs. So how they got away with that?
That's true.
Well, those are the guys that.
And some people end up with none.
Are those the guys that re-upped for a second tour? I know they got a second.
I think there were. If there were just time slots, they were allowed to go if they could finagle it. I guess I'm not sure. I never even thought about it.
No kidding.
So we had a lieutenant that went to Bangkok and never came back, and I remember, because we had to drive. The first sergeant said to this one guy, says, go down to Thompson and pick up the lieutenant. So he goes down, and those R&R planes used to come in only once a day. So he went down to meet, and he comes back in the Jeep, no lieutenant. So the first sergeant says, "Where's the lieutenant?" "I don't know. He wasn't on a plane." "Well, what do you mean he wasn't on a plane?" Sarge, he was not on a plane. "Well, maybe I got the date wrong." So the next day, go down the next day. He goes down. He never came back. And about, maybe about 2 weeks later, first sergeant got us all together and said, "Listen, you got to be interviewed. They're going to ask you a bunch of questions. You say yes or you say no. That's the only thing you say to these people." And they were from Army ASA. And you walked in, and he said, here's the question. Did he ever have any subversive activity? There was I don't remember what the questions, but basically, we don't know whatever happened to the guy. He never came back, and he was a lieutenant.
He's probably still there.
He hooked up with someone. Yeah, he hooked up with some real nice girl.
A bird, a flock.
A flock. Get the flock out of here.
It's cute. It's cute.
All right.